The office of the Israeli Prime Minister has responded in the last few minutes, describing the ruling from the ICC as anti-Semitic, also adding that Israel categorically rejects the absurd and false lies levelled against it by the ICC.
The International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and former Defence Minister Yoav Gallant in a historic move. The warrants were issued along with one against top Hamas military leader Mohammed Deif, who has been reported killed and who helped orchestrate the October 7th attacks on Israel. The ICC's warrants for Netanyahu and Gallant include the use of starvation as a weapon and directing attacks against civilians. The court said it didn't find grounds for bringing a charge of extermination, a finding that would rule out charges approaching genocide. The warrants pose a challenge for Israel's efforts to rally support on the world stage, potentially putting Netanyahu and Gallant at risk of arrest if they travel to countries under ICC jurisdiction.
There are different parts of the ICC. So one part, the prosecution, has to ask another part, a group of judges, the pretrial chamber, and say, essentially, dear judges, I think there's enough evidence here and enough reason to issue an arrest warrant.
The warrants also put the ICC's reputation on the line, with the U.S. and Israel criticizing it for investigating a democratic nation that was responding to an attack by a terror organization. Several other Hamas leaders were also named in the ICC's May application for warrants, but they have since been killed by Israel. The ICC said it withdrew the application for warrants for Hamas leaders Ismail Haniyeh and Yahya Sinwar, who have been confirmed dead. Netanyahu's office said it strongly rejected the court's decision, calling it politically motivated, and said Israel wouldn't retreat until all its war aims are achieved. Israel has repeatedly said it has facilitated deliveries of food to Gaza and has complied with its obligations under international law. Leaders in the country criticized the warrants for ignoring Hamas's culpability in the war. The International Criminal Court alleges Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant committed war crimes and crimes against humanity during the Gaza offensive. Many U.S. politicians in Israel had criticized ICC Chief Prosecutor Karim Khan for moving ahead with a request for the warrants, while his staff was still preparing for a week of meetings with Israeli officials to hear their explanation of the country's conduct during the war. An ICC pretrial chamber found reasonable grounds to believe that Netanyahu and Gallant are criminally responsible for perpetrating the targeting of civilians and using starvation as a method of warfare. If the charges are ever adjudicated, the court would have to work through tricky issues of the right of self-defense in the law of war and the rights of civilians under international humanitarian law. In 2015, the ICC recognized a Palestinian state as a signatory, and in 2021 determined itself as having jurisdiction in the West Bank, Gaza, and East Jerusalem.